fuzzy, Surrey, and outside they're doing the landscaping, for which we pay a fortune. Um, there's a passage in the Pillars of Wisdom, Seven Pillars of Wisdom by T.E. Lawrence, where he describes Auda Abu Tai most uh, beautifully, charismatically played in the film by Anthony Quinn. I am a river to my people. This wonderful stuff. And Lawrence describes him. He says he found him very compelling personality. He was like a child. He was very brave and very with a great animal intelligence, very shrewd. And he said, but there were some days when he was clearly out of sorts, a bit grumpy, a bit unhappy. And Lawrence said until he had killed, and that the killings seemed to calm him. To he seemed to have purged something. Trust me, it's a marvelous book. Really recommend it as a huge variation on how Europeans write about themselves and the world and everybody else. Anyway, I encountered this. The Rest is Politics. Rory, Alistair and Rory. I always forget their last names. Scots, both Scots. Discussing the trans issue. And I understand that it's an issue, and I understand that feelings would run high, and I don't have a big, I don't have a big, I don't take a big position on, I'm not privileged to. I shouldn't. But if I were to, if somebody asked me what I thought about it, is I don't. I find that the claims about biology and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so what? You know what I mean? However, what I do find interesting and disturbing at the same time is that the dispute over the bathrooms, for which people like huge, massive figures, to me anyway, subjectively, people like Germaine Greer, her response to the notion of women's spaces being invaded and then being condemned because of that by a constituency of being a TERF, trans-exclusive radical feminist. And as Germaine herself has said, I'm not anti-trans at all. It's got nothing to do with it. What interests me about it is how a constituency, a group, using the mores of debate or dispute of the day of discourse, can condemn somebody like that outright. It's funny because it's actually a voice of the patriarchy. It says you have no cause. Now, if you go into a man's bathroom, restroom, WC, men are inordinately uncomfortable about being checked out by other men. And that's why we have our separate urinals, and we sometimes take every other one, and especially if the other guy who's peeing is tall, etc., etc., etc. So we're uncomfortable now. So, and we don't have, there isn't really a historic legacy of men being raped by being raped just in general, or being forced or being abused or anything like that. So you've got a community of women who say, I am not entirely comfortable with this idea that somebody who has decided and has maybe had operations, which are not necessarily visible, you don't care, are you carrying a certificate of operations? To operate on the notion that people who have decided that they are now women will not behave aggressively like men have done since caveman, we're told. I think it's a little bit later than that, but that's what we're told. That they wouldn't have some severe misgivings about women who were born men coming in. Now, I have no argument about women being born men as biologically men who's saying, I'm not that, I am this. I understand that. I totally understand. I'm full sympathy with that. My thing is, why do you have absolutely no tolerance for the woman who says, I'm uncomfortable with that? Don't make that leap. Ask me first, perhaps. I have a friend, an actress that I've worked with several times. Marvelous actress, woman, person. She said she goes to an independent cinema down in the village somewhere in Manhattan, and she said that they have that they have. She goes to the restroom. And sometimes she encounters trans women in there, and she says several times she's been propositioned. She doesn't complain inordinately about it. She didn't bring it up in conversation. It was just me asking this question. So it does happen, and it would seem to me that people who have had those kinds of experiences, or even people who are simply naturally worried about those kinds of experiences. I heard something else today of somebody saying we are educated to fear, we're being educated to fear, right? And they were saying this as if this was some sort of a natural state. We're educated to fear certain kinds of things. And we are. We're told, don't talk to strangers and stuff like that, which is a pity, but that's what we're told. And I think at some point you have to say, I need to stop being educated to fear. However, on the evidence of thousands of years, women have a very reasonable claim to be afraid of men in women's spaces. Boom. In order for me to say that, it has no bearing on what I feel, and what I feel actually is fucking irrelevant. What I feel about trans men or women is irrelevant, but I happen to think, should you ask me, that I think it's entirely real. In fact, I think it's more real than we are comfortable with it being. I think that the gender, the manifestation that we have of the gender, the two genders that we've decided there are two genders. There are some tribal societies who'd start with 5, but we've decided there are 2. They're obviously not working for us as they exist. They don't work very well. Christianity, the religions will insist that they are nature, they are God's plan, bollocks to God. Then it's not working. What interests me, though, is this kind of colonial attitude that the righteous, the conquistador, the pilgrim will come into the Americas or into the Australias or into the Canada, whatever you want to be. They will show up and immediately condemn the uneasiness that the local community has with them. It's some sort of a complete all-encompassing egotism, cultural egotism, and narcissism. It'd be like saying, say, in 1902. So after the Civil War, after the Emancipation, and after all that sort of stuff has gone on, after the, Reconstruction, and that stuff has sort of been in gear and has gone on. If you had a community in Oklahoma, as we know about, you have a community in Oklahoma, a black and African American community that has their church. They might be uncomfortable having white congregants or people saying, we want to come to your church. White people saying, we want to come to your church. Now, these white people might say, no, listen, we are totally with you. We are colorblind, we are this and that, we just want to come and praise the Lord, whatever. The African American community's suspicion, and even a step further, their resistance to that happening is fucking understandable, right? It leaves the world open to many discussions, many really, really valuable, interesting discussions, like a third fucking bathroom. If that's not enough, a fourth bathroom. Think of all the jobs that you create of bathroom makers. Just get over it. It's I've encountered it a lot, this lack of individuation, for sure, lack of human beings arriving at a certain comfortable sense of themselves. To extend the story that I have, the idea of a tribe, what a tribe should do. A tribal culture should prepare you to leave that culture. And it does often. I've seen that happen. It should prepare you to leave, to go and intermarry, to go and encounter and work with and live amongst people not of your tribe. The tribe that insists that you remain within the tribe is adolescent, is a dysfunctional tribe. Otherwise, we're not really human beings. Or tribes make the mistake of saying, no, we are the human beings, you all are something else, and we know all about that. So it just struck me today that, it's the same thing as going, well, look at what the what's his name, Hawley, Tom Cotton, this kind of typical Republic. They're a joke to me. They make me laugh with their rigidity. You're anti-Semitic, you belong to, you're a terrorist and all that sort of stuff. And it's like, no, you're a colonist. Colonists and terrorists come hand in hand. One feeds the other. Colonists came first. They are the cause, right? Yeah, many thoughts about this kind of thing, but it just hit me today, the way these two men of dubious distinction. I mean, I'm fond of both of them, Rory and Alistair, on The Rest is Politics. And I usually watch them for the amusement, because they so utterly represent the status quo in the status quo of all quos, which is, Britishism. Yeah, one of the difficult things that most European countries have to come to terms with after their centuries in the sun, they're lording over the rest of the planet. What was it? At one point, 84% of the land mass of the planet were colonies of a European country. I'm sure that most of that, whether it was a huge, at least 60% was British at one point, and that they still maintain that as their identity. It's just such fun. The island cannot even fucking feed itself. It is totally dependent on the only reason that it is a famous spot is because of its colonial history. because of its great guns that it built and put on its great ships, and went out there with its great cross and cannon and supremacy, and did what it did to the world. And to hear these two chaps kind of hanging on to the vestiges of that is always fun. Anyway,